Well, I'm so pleased today to introduce to the Northeastern Seminary community, for those of you who don't already know, Pastor Gerald Coleman. And he's affectionately known on campus around here as Pastor G. He is the campus pastor at Roberts Wesleyan University, as well as the director of the Office of Spiritual Life. And I am so grateful to have Pastor G as my pastor here on campus. I'm really thankful for him. I have often myself just been so encouraged to be with him. So I invited him today to be part of this spiritual resourcing series that we're doing. And so Pastor G, first, if you'd be willing, I'd love to have you just let folks know, just describe a little bit about what you're doing in ministry in this season of life.
Well, greetings, Dr. Letterman. It's a joy to be with you. Thank you for having me on. And hello, Northeastern Seminarians, my family. I, too, am a graduate of Northeastern. So what am I doing in ministry? So I serve here as the campus pastor, meeting with students, making sure, kind of trying my best to keep the energy of spiritual formation alive in the life of the students outside the classroom. And I enjoy that. I also serve as a senior pastor for Mount Carmel Church in Chicago. So I'm traveling there twice a month. And then I also do online Bible studies and conduct a lot of our meetings online. And so a small church there, wonderful people. And so that's what I'm up to these days, is the work of pastoring.
and all especially with the commuting role. I mean, that is a lot. And God bless you. I'm so glad that we get to have you, that the Lord's led you to be part here of at Roberts Wesleyan University as our campus pastor. So as you know, what we're trying to do here is just provide for the Northeastern Seminary students and community some spiritual encouragement. You remember, because it hasn't been all that long ago, we were in seminary together in some different classes and things we did. And it's a very, very, for most students, an extremely full life and full time being in seminary. And we want to provide whatever encouragement, advice, however you want to think about it, something to really just encourage people to not lose sight of the fact that we're not just learning about God, but that we're called to be in relationship with God, and how we can nurture that part of us when we have such a busy life right now for most people in seminary. So love to hear you just talk about that. I just invite whatever kind of emerges and rises up for you around that topic.
Yeah. I love the phrase that you said. You said, "How do we not lose sight?" And for me, I think what I would offer is this sense of attentiveness to what God is up to in our lives and around us, paying attention, if I could say it that way. It's, I think, as I think back on my time in seminary, life is busy. And one thing that I can say that I found out that I'm almost sure of is that life doesn't always slow down either. You often say, when I finish this task, I'm going to take some time. And it's like time is hard you have to take it because it goes so fast, and there's always something that, whether you plan on it or you don't plan on it, life has a way of just happening. And so I would say the thing that comes to mind for me is paying attention, being aware. I think the unique thing about seminary is now you're submitting yourself to a course of learning. You're assigned books, you're assigned readings, and it's really wonderful stuff. I mean, occasionally you may have a class or a text where you're like, this is work to work through. This is maybe not something that I'm drawn to, but I'm going to work through it. But for the most part, I remember that being an experience of, there was a lot of good stuff there. And so I think the tendency could be like to focus so much on the grade and the coursework that you kind of lose sight of this sight of God, what he's doing in your life, what he's calling you to. And so I think it's important just to just be aware. And I know that sounds simple, but how do you keep your heart open to what God may be doing? And I know for me, it was hard. I love to read. And so the big switch for me was not reading the text that I wanted to read, my natural curiosity, but now having to switch to assigned readings. That's a different thing. But being able to say, okay, this is what's in front of me. How do I look for the Lord in this? I mean, because he is there, but it may take a little bit more discipline and also not becoming it's the danger of familiarity, if I could say it that way, of, oh, this is just a course. And I believe it was Luther. I heard this in seminary class, believe it or not, that Martin Luther warned about speaking about God, as an object to be studied, but being aware that, God is a person to be encountered, or we can be encountered by him at any moment. And so to keep that sense of awe of that God is at work, he's doing something through the class, through what's happening in my heart. And how do I pay attention to that? And how do I be fully present? Because that's the trick, bringing all of yourself to be aware of what God is up to, aware of what's happening around me and within my own heart.
Beautiful. So I really appreciate that. You're right. It sounds like an orientation. It's an intentional orientation to assume God is at work.
Yeah.
In all of us, and in you, in particular as a seminary student, and as you're being developed as a leader, and then just keeping that in mind, that it's not only in the doing. Well, it is in the doing of the papers and the reading and that, but kind of also having a larger perspective, even across classes and across life, this awareness and kind of a openness. Lord, what are you doing, and how can I be faithful to it? Am I hearing? Does that sound? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What comes to mind is I remember in high school, I played basketball in high school, and in practice, you can go through the motions, but your heart not be in it. And you go through the motions when you're like, okay, let's just get it done. Let's get it over with. Let's just get through it. And I can hear my coach, Coleman, get your heart into it. Where are you at? Are you all here? And I think about that, the challenge of being in seminary, of just going through the motions. There's that old commercial, time to make the donuts, the old Dunkin' Donuts commercial, and but to keep your heart engaged, and I think of having this, keeping your heart in awe of what God is up to, looking for ways that he might show up, and ways that he will reveal himself in a homework assignment or something that is said in the classroom. And in my experience, there were a lot of wonderful things that happened in the classroom. Times where there were things that maybe needed correction in our lives, or maybe collectively, and we had to step into that moment, and as a class own that moment, or just personally, ways that God was revealing something to me, or shining his light on something, and to be able to say, oh, okay, I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to stay engaged, and recognize that because this is coursework, it doesn't mean that God is not present in it. That yes, that this is about learning. Yes, I want to get a good grade, but God is, if you will, he's hidden within the work.
I love that you just said that, because it almost sounds funny to say it, and yet I think it can be fairly common, especially for, there's all different kind of personality types, and we bring all kind of experiences to graduate school, to doing schoolwork. And it is really easy to fall into that. This is a task I have to do, that I've been given. I want to be faithful. I'm going to do it. And that it's just a task. And I say just, and not looking for guidance. That's really helpful. So I have just, if you don't mind, I have a couple questions that rose to mind as you were saying that. So I guess two things. One is, I wonder, as what do you find was helpful when you look back? What would be helpful, or you could even do what were the obstacles to kind of maintaining that awareness of God is at work? And like, how do you keep that orientation? How do you keep coming back to that orientation, especially for those of us who may be more on the task oriented, and feeling overwhelmed by so much? I just have to get through, like, I just have to get basketball practice done. And I used to play basketball in high school too. Isn't that hilarious?
Hey,
So
all right.
You will never think in my stature, but yes. But like, what is it that kind of helps keep us oriented that way? Do you have any suggestions on anything else, anything that comes to mind?
So I know for me personally, it was not doing too much, if I can say it that way. Like, meaning for my normal reading schedule of things that maybe my devotional practices, I'm not saying just get rid of those, but many times that my coursework had to become, my devotional practice. Like, okay, I can't have too much on my plate, so I'm going to have to sacrifice these things, so to speak, and just to fully engage with these things. As I think back in different classes, such as pastoral counseling, just those different courses, and really saying, okay, I'm going to engage as best I can with this, and to engage my own heart in it, not just my head, but my heart. And that is a practice of, okay, not just learning the concept, but if these are things I want to pass on, then I've, in a sense, got to be first a partaker of. And so how am I wrestling with what I'm studying? How is that showing up, in my own life, in my normal life, with, so to speak, with my everyday life, with my family? How am I doing with these things? And so I would say to bring all of yourself to the courses that you are taking as best you can. And some things you might just have to let go. I know that it could be a guilty feeling of, well, I'm used to reading maybe 3 Psalms in the morning, and I'm used to doing this particular practice. But recognizing that you're in seminary is not just another thing to do. This is it is something that you've signed up for, but it has a way of shaping you. And what does it mean to be a full participant? Mind, heart, body, emotions. And so to fully participate, that's the best way I can respond. That I'm drawing short on words here.
No, Pastor G, that's actually really helpful, because I was thinking it's a common, like, the response to wanting to do that is to continue to orient yourself toward that full engagement, and being aware of when I'm stepping out of it. Like, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. There's all these other things. What needs to come off my plate in this season, or shift a little bit?
Yes.
And what needs to be on there, and how do I fully engage this opportunity of seminary? So I think that's really wise and helpful. And my second question was really about responding, which I already hear you talking about now. So it's not just waiting till we finish seminary and then applying what we learned someday in ministry or in a formal ministry setting. But a lot of what we're learning, we actually can engage in the way we are becoming, the person we're becoming in everyday life. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Oh, absolutely. That formation piece. It's I am in the process of becoming. And I remember my dad saying this years ago. Um, he always said to me, son, he said, the best messages come from your life lessons, because a message from the heart will reach the heart. And so I think about in seminary, if my heart is engaged and I'm wrestling with the deeper things and I'm aware of how I'm engaging with this material, even if it's something that's rubbing me the wrong way, I can remember looking at church history and learning about the Roman Catholic tradition. And, there are these views or these concepts that I thought I knew about the Catholic Church that I didn't know. And I heard a quote once that says, many people think they disagree with the Catholic Church, but they only disagree with what they think they know. But there are times where, it's quite humbling to have to admit, wait a minute, I had this wrong, and this is actually a good thing. And I can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Well, what is happening there? That's not something just to gloss over. I'm engaging my heart. I'm actually changing my thinking and learning. It's a repentance of sorts. And so all of that happens in the classroom, outside the classroom. And in that we're interacting, I think, with the Spirit of God and becoming who He wants us to become. It's not just about information, right? But it's about the formation and the transformation that happens in that.
Amen. So well said. I really appreciate it. And I just really think that's encouraging. I hope that's encouraging to the Northeastern Seminary community, just again, for all of us to be reminded that as we're working to be faithful in a calling, in the sense of calling to seminary study, that it isn't just about the doing. It's the doing along with and married with the becoming. And so I really appreciate that. I think I find myself encouraged. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Is there anything else you want to add, please? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I've been talking about engaging with the material in the coursework, but this piece cannot be understated. There's information in my tradition, the Pentecostal tradition that I grew up in. There was always an emphasis placed on impartation. That you can learn something from the person, right? Yeah, and so a lot of times, I think professors are the best kept secret, if I can say it that way. Being able to ask them questions to hear about their experience, because we have the text, we have the physical, we have the textbooks, but then we have living text in those who are teaching the course to us. And so being able to just receive wisdom from their experience, the hardships, the toils, to me, that is incredible. Sitting there and gleaning all of that wisdom, and then being able to say, hey, you know what? Something you said really sparked a thought, and I'd love to be able to catch up with you and talk about this. Now, I'm not trying to make any of our professors' lives more busy here, but I think that is something, there is something there that I think that we should really, if I could say it this way, take advantage of. These human living texts who are investing in us, things that they've learned, and they've come at, for some, quite a price.
Yeah, Joe, I found the same thing because I'm an alum of the seminary as well, and I found the same thing. And I just want to add a little thought to that. And because the way formation works, it's the same thing with what we glean from each other in the classroom, right? Because our classrooms are so rich with different people from all different experiences, walk with Christ. Folks are there because they love God and they're following, His calling. And yet we come from a lot of different streams of the Christian tradition. And so we also learn from each other.
Yes.
And taking the time to be able to say and encourage someone, when you said that got me thinking about this, or I felt this. And it may be something we agree or disagree with, but taking time to actually reach out and connect and say, you've got me thinking, you've got me praying about this. I'm wondering. So also with each other, with the students as well. So good. I'm so glad you remind. I think those are really helpful. I find this really helpful, orienting ourselves to remembering God is at work in our classroom as well as across our lives, and kind of having an awareness, a sensitivity to all of what's going on, a responsiveness, making space for this unique calling right now, so as not to have some things may have to come off the plate, to make room for this unique calling right now, learning from our professors, from each other. Thank you. Thank you. Rich and helpful encouragement. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a joy to share.
Thanks so much. Blessings.
Blessings to you too.